Friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for Huck TV. Yes, this is Huck's channel. She is the star. She is the princess. She has the side eyes. And she has a lot of friends out there, huh? You got a lot of partners out there that wait for you to come on every other day. Look at that. Looking up towards the stars. Giving her that profile. Yeah. Oh, that's a good girl. Yeah, it's a good girl. Yes, sir. Yeah, I love you a lot. Oh, you've been sleeping, huh? Okay. Huck says that she will make sure that I'm doing a good job. She'll woof it up if I make any mistakes. And we will proceed along. Thanks for being here. Yeah, the holidays are behind us. The New Year's in front of us. And exciting times. Yeah, exciting times. So far, I got to say the New Year for me is about a 1 out of 10. Things aren't going real good. And I may tell you about it someday, but right now, I'll just plow along doing the best I can with what I have. The numbers in the last 2 weeks of the show have been abysmal. And a lot of you have talked to me, sent me messages and said, hey, forcibly unsubscribed 3 times in the last 4 months. I'm not getting any notifications of your shows. Very frustrating. And I can't even begin to tell you how frustrated we are. Only thing I could ask is that you bookmark our YouTube channel and just come here every other day. We are here every other day. By hook or by crook, I'm going to put a video up for you. Today's videos, the first video I'm going to do about a missing person, deals with somebody who's in a cluster zone of missing, and we're going to talk about him. And then the next 2 cases are very, very weird. And we'll get into those. First case deals with a man named Stephen Nichols, 23 years old, missing November 12th, 1903, 121 years ago. His home was in Palmer, Michigan, on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And he went missing outside of Negaunee, which is like the next city over. So here's Marquette, and Palmer's right about here, and Negaunee's up a little higher. This is Sawyer Air Force Base. This is Lake Superior, where we have talked about other things disappearing. There's people missing all down here, all over here, and all over here. This area has to be one of the busiest for missing people I've found anywhere. Michigan has always been that, but why is that? Tell me. Water. Water is the key here. Well, Stephen was 23 years old, but he had hunted for many years. On November 11th, he left with 2 friends to go to the area just outside Negaunee, deer hunting. And everything north of Negaunee, kind of northwest, there's nothing out here. There's just like nothing even today out there. Swamps, hunting area, lots of water, lots of good hunting. And back then, the article stated that there was nothing for sometimes 100 miles in one direction. No settlers, no nothing. Well, the guys got into their hunting area, established a camp. In the morning of the 12th, Stephen wakes up with everybody else and he says, hey, I just want to hunt alone. I'm going to go this direction. You guys go that direction. We'll meet back here at night. Everybody says, okay. He was dressed warmly. He was carrying a rifle. He did not have a compass. He was knowledgeable, knew the area. And they stated that he had at least 15 rifle bullets with him. Now, that's not bad. I recommend you carry 21. I've stated this before, that if you ever are lost in the woods and you're hunting or you have a firearm, 3 shots in rapid succession is the world indicator that somebody needs help when they're lost. In another hour, hour and a half, shoot 3 more. Don't move. That's the way that searchers and help can find you, is they can kind of zero in on the shooting. So if you have 21 rounds, that's 7 different rounds you can put out, letting people know you need help. Well, he didn't return that night. The next morning, they go back to town and they tell the parents of Stevens that he's missing. And they also tell a series of parents of other friends. And they're trying to get family and friends together to get out there to search for him. So an all-out search started almost immediately. And that search went on for weeks. Family refused to give up. They kept pushing out further and further. That whole area of Michigan, the newspapers picked up the story. Other hunters canceled their trips, came out, and were working the ground looking for Stephen. Nobody wanted to give up. During that time, they had snow flurries, they had some rain, they had wind. So that would inhibit the search. They would stop for a while, pick it up again. It was like an unbelievable effort. Then on December 15th, an odd thing happened. A female resident of Negaunee contacted Stephen's family. She stated that she never had this before, but she had a vision that she had to share. She said she saw Stephen's body laying partially in a hollowed out log. And then she went on to give finite details about that area. How far from camp, how big the trees were in the area, what the topography was like. Was he alive? Was he dead? And then the parents brought other people in that knew the area better than them, and they had her explain to them what she had seen in this vision. Well, one of the hunters that was a friend of the family says, "I think I know where this is." And so he and 2 other hunters the next day went to this location where they thought she was trying to describe. Well, they get to the spot, hollowed out log, topography matches, everything matches, but Stephen's not there. And they search for a half a day, they don't have anything. And they said at the time that they didn't think he had even been there. Well, imagine the parents. They probably thought that they had found him at this point. But when I was reading this, I thought it was going to lead up to Stephen being found. The way the woman was talking and the way everyone was so sure that they knew this exact spot by the way she described it. Well, December 1903 ended with Stephen not being found. Not a good thing. Well, they go through the rest of the winter. The snow starts to melt. Weather starts to get better. They're into April now of 1904. That area of Michigan at the time had a lot of lumber mills. And at a remote site, several miles outside of Negaunee, on one of these lumber mills, they described a mentally deranged man that walked into their camp. They said that didn't look right. He was thin, dirty, almost incoherent. And word got back to Negaunee that they think maybe they found Stephen Nichols. Well, somebody sent a carriage out to get this person and bring him back to the asylum that they had in Negaunee. Person got there, they cleaned him up, and Stephen's parents went out to meet this person. Almost immediately they said, hey, this is not our son. This is not Stephen. Stephen Nichols was never found. This area has had several hunters that have vanished and have never been found. In that area north of this location, up in here, that's where that Air Force fighter disappeared that was scrambled to look at a UFO. Disappeared, never was found. This area of Upper Michigan and Upper Wisconsin across the lake has a strange history of people reporting that their compasses don't work. People have reported them being out hunting, and all of a sudden the compass starts going in circles. Other people have told me that because of the large amount of iron and other minerals in the ground in some areas, this causes the compasses to work weirdly. Well, if that is the cause, then that's understandable. But again, there's been many airplanes that have disappeared in that Michigan area as well. A lot. So it's hard to say really what's going on there. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. But I will say that Michigan as a whole has some of the strangest disappearances I've ever researched. So, yeah. Now, I will say one thing. I've been to Marquette. Marquette's an interesting town way out there in the far, far north. And when Ben was, I think he was 16, 17, his team was playing in a tournament in Marquette. Marquette is a very famous hockey town, really famous. And we were playing in this really old arena. And I'm not complaining because it was old, because it had so many classic indicators of hockey's probably been there for 80 years. And it was like sitting there and reliving decades and decades of the famous people that have come through there over the years. And it was such a long drive to get there. But wow, what memories. Yeah, Marquette, Michigan. All right, now the next two stories. Hopefully you've watched Missing 411, the UFO Connection. And if you haven't, you need to get on Tubi right now and watch it. You can watch it on Amazon, Tubi. Several platforms have it. I think Hulu has it. But it's going to help you understand the progression in thinking that we've had in this research. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is I won't jump to conclusions. I'm going to lay out facts for you. It's your job to come to your own conclusions. A lot of people say, well, what do you think, Dave? And I always say, well, if I give you the answers, you're always going to question it. If you come to conclusions on your own, you're not going to question it. Because that's your ability for your mind to reconcile facts and what you know in life. You okay, Huck? You okay? You a good girl? Yeah. She's looking at me like, hey, Dad. I was sort of saying, hurry up. So, some of these strange cases, if you don't really understand how we've gotten to this point today where we are, and in that UFO connection, this may not make sense, but here we go. A boy by the name of Henry Bott, 8 years old, went missing in February 1887. Now, this is one of those cases that you guys gave me, and this person sent it in. I've never heard of it, and it is right on key. So the location was the KOW swamp in Australia. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Bott took their son Henry and their daughter to the swamp for a day of like vacation, fun, playing in the water, etc. Well, let me show you where this is. This is Leachville, Australia. This is the Cow Swamp. This is Gunbower. This is the Victoria, New South Wales border. Dalton's Bridge, Kahuna, Horfield. This area in here has almost nothing in it even today. If you look up the Cow Swamp, KOW, online, you kind of get a feeling for what this thing looks like even today. Lots of water. It's probably more lush then than it was today. But they take their son and daughter. Family arrives, and Mr. Bott had to leave to visit a nearby farmer to take care of some business. And Mrs. Bott was allowed to take the two kids towards the swamp, and they wanted to pick flowers, and she said, yeah, go ahead and pick flowers. Now, right away, if you're a longtime viewer, I've said this repeatedly, these things seem to happen when Dad's not around. And I find that really odd. So if there is something happening, why would they want the father around? Is it too many minds involved? Male's too aggressive? I'm not sure what it is, but Mr. Bott wasn't around. So there's no other people in the immediate area. Mrs. Bott's taking care of some other things. And after a short while, they didn't say how long that short while was, the daughter comes back to her with a whole handful of flowers. This is very reminiscent of a case in northern Pennsylvania I wrote about, where a young girl, about the same age as Henry, was picking flowers and disappeared, was never found. So the girl gets back, gives her mom the flowers. And Mrs. Bott goes, well, where's Henry? And she said, oh, he's over there at the tree. And she says, what tree? There's a lot of trees. And she turns and she kind of points in the direction of a tree. But there were several trees. Maybe 150, 200 feet away. But she doesn't see Henry. So she grabs her daughter by the hand and goes, hey, come on, let's go over there and let's get him. So the two start walking in that direction. And they get there, and they don't see anything. Henry's not around. They call his name. So Mrs. Bott says, well, we got to go search around a little bit. So they start looking around, calling his name, walk further out, and they're not having anything. Mrs. Bott's getting nervous. So they turn around, go back to the carriage, and they knew where the father was at the farmer's location. So they go back and they get the dad, and in the presence of the farmer, they explain what happened. The farmer says, that's okay. I'm going to get more of the other farmers in here, and we'll help you search. And there's several black laborers I have that are expert trackers, and I'm going to bring them as well. Brilliant. Now, as someone who has been around Native American trackers here in the USA, the best in the world. First Nations trackers up in Alaska, Canada, best in the world. The black trackers in Australia, on par, best in the world. They grew up out in that area. They knew what these plants do when they're stepped on. When you step in a certain direction, which way the plant bends. Little things in the bush that tell you that somebody went a certain direction. To have those people working for you is huge. And if they told me something, I wouldn't even give it a second thought. I'd go follow exactly what they say. So the first people in are 3 black trackers that this farmer brought. And Mrs. Bott says, yes, we were right here, and Henry went that direction, and my daughter went that direction, so they said, okay. So they start tracking from the carriage towards the tree. They're going slow, methodical. They're not fast. And Mr. and Mrs. Bott are following them. They get to the tree, and all three of them just look around. They look up in the tree. The tree's not that big, and you could see up into it, so. At the same time, there's 200 farmers that are starting their search at the carriage and following them out into the bush towards the swamp. So the farmer who has these trackers working for him, he says, well, what happened? You stopped. And one black tracker spoke for all of them, and he said just a few words. He said, "Him go up in air." Oh, what? Tracker said, "Him go up in air." Now, if you're new to the show, if you're new to this, you think that's insanity. But if you're not new to the show and you understand what we've talked about in the past, this is not insanity. Well, the 200 searchers, farmers, searched for 3 days. They never found Henry. The storyline is that 50 years later, Mrs. Bott and Mr. Bott died, and this mystery had followed them their entire life. The person that sent this in was very smart. They understand what missing 411 is all about. And if you understand the UFO connection, you understand why those 5 words, "Him go up in air," make complete sense. I've never seen anything like that. Probably never see anything like it again. Remember that case, Henry Bott, Australia. And I've stated all along, the cases in Australia mimic the cases in the US and Canada. Next incident, right here in my home state, Montana. Never heard of this case before. It's not in the Montana book. It's new work on our behalf that found it. Involved a man named E. Cost, 35 years old. Went missing in the fall of 1911. And he was last seen in Livingston, Montana. Now, Cost was German. Remember that, why that's important. And he was also a world traveler. In the fall of 1911, he visited Livingston, and he made his rounds contacting a local newspaper, some city officials. I think he was trying to stir up business. That's what it kind of sounded like. What kind of business? I don't know. But after he made those rounds in the city, nobody saw him, and nobody really gave it much thought. Now, so that was in the fall of 1911. June 26, 1912. William Sims and Charles Stevenson were on horseback rounding up cattle, and they were about 2 miles west of Arley, Montana. I've been through that town 50 times since I've been here. I drive through it between Whitefish and Missoula. You go right through the middle of Arley. Not much of a town, but beautiful country. Well, the 2 men on horseback are riding around looking for cattle, but as they're riding, they see a big pine tree. And they look at the pine tree and they said, "That looks odd." Both of them say, "Yeah, there's something odd about that. Like there's something weird in the tree." Men both carrying rifles, ride over. And what they see, they can't believe. They get closer and they see someone in the tree. Now, the scenario is that they look at the tree, and 9 feet up off the ground, there's a hunting platform, like a deer stand today, but they called it a hunting platform back then. And 31 feet above the platform, this big tree, was a man hanging upside down by 1 foot on a tree limb. The scene is described that the man's coat and overcoat had fallen over his head, hanging upside down. And the body was described as nearly mummified. Now, let me explain this. Part of mummification, and when a body is mummified, is that the body is cleaned exceptionally, so there's no bacteria on the body to break it down. I'm not saying this happened, but I'm just giving you an overview. A lot of people who are abducted say that they're cleansed before they go into the ship, so that all the bacteria and things comes off their body, so they don't infect, I guess, the aliens. I don't know. So when I heard that this person's body is mummified, right away I'm thinking something odd, really odd. Well, they said that he was wearing clothes, but no underclothes. Clue number 2. A lot of people that are abducted report being brought back in other people's clothes, other people's underwear, no underwear, underwear on backwards, clothes on backwards. Bank on that. The 2 guys ride back, get the coroner. Coroner comes out, does an investigation. In the report, the coroner stated that this man was within easy reach of branches to pull himself out of that position. And he was a little confused why, if the man had fallen somehow, why he didn't just pull himself up. Coroner also said that there were no marks on the body. And the coroner's name was Marsh. And Marsh said it was the most unusual case ever in his career. They found some documents on the body saying it was E.E. Cost. Now, nobody could come up with a rational explanation why a world traveler would be 2 miles off any road or trail in the middle of nowhere, hanging by his foot on a tree limb. Now, we've talked about this in Missing 411, the UFO connection. Many abductees are dropped. They report being abducted in their sleep in the middle of the night, and then dropped a couple feet off their bed onto their bed, or, as in the UFO connection, dropped on his shoulder and rolled down a hill. What if they dropped him through a tree? Instead of hitting the ground, he got hooked up on a branch and didn't fall all the way. There was never a determination on the cause of death that I read. But if a coroner in this Missoula region said that is the most unusual case he's had in a career, I'm buying into it. And he's German. What more can I say? So those are, you got a bonus today. Those are 3 cases. Now, I've had an abnormal number of you write and say that you've been unsubscribed forcibly. You're not getting notifications. And that's probably why the channel is suffering from such low viewership right now. People just, you don't get that reminder and you just tune out. I don't know. It's very odd, folks. And I'm still looking for another place to go, because viewership is down 60% from what it was 3 years ago. 60%. And the numbers of people that are subscribed have continued to go up. How does that make any sense at all? It doesn't. So anytime you can put this on your social media, I greatly appreciate it. Remember, kindness revolution. Being kind costs nothing. And we need a happier, friendlier U.S. And it costs us just a smile sometimes to make somebody's day. Thank you for being here. I'm not sure if you could hear Huck snoring or not, but she was. Be safe. Paulides out. Hey, get your